welcome to my channel where I talk mostly about watercolour. So today I'm going to do a demonstration very similar to these two paintings, and these are based on a botanical theme, but they're very abstract, and I used a wet on wet technique. Okay, so I'm going to mask off my area for the demonstration, but for these paintings I didn't actually do that. It's a way that I quite like to work, where you don't mask off the area so that you can sort of find your composition afterwards by moving the mat around. But like I said, for the demonstration I will mask it off. And I also used this medium here, which is gum arabic, and that just makes the paint a bit easier to control when you're using a wet on wet technique, which I like, but you don't have to use it, so go ahead if you've got it, give it a go, but if not, just you can do something similar without. Okay, so the colours that I'm intending on using are these. I've got cerulean blue, I've got a deep red, and I've got cobalt blue, and I've also got burnt sienna in my palette. I might add some other colours, I'm not quite sure, but these are the ones I'm going to start off with. Okay, so I'm just masking off my area there, and that's going to be roughly a 6" by 6" square. And I'm just going to add the gum arabic medium to my water, and I'll be using that water to mix the paints. Now this just controls the spread of the paint a bit when you're using a wet and wet technique, but you definitely don't have to use this medium if you don't have it. Okay, so let's get straight into the painting. Now I did just use the edge of the paper there to test the colour, but I'm coming in with a mix of the red, and this has got the burnt sienna and the cobalt blue in as well, and it's actually got a little bit of yellow ochre, so it's a mix of quite a few different colours. And I'm just using this brush in quite a loose way. I do want this to be very sort of loose and free feeling painting, and what I'm doing there is I'm just controlling the edge a bit where it feathers. As long as you don't go in with a wetter brush, it's okay. If you go in with a wetter brush, then you'll get blooms, which you might want, but I didn't want blooms for this painting, so that's just an important thing to bear in mind. Now I'm getting my cobalt blue here, and I've got a bigger brush, and I'm sort of rolling it around. I didn't want to see the brush strokes, and I didn't want to be able to control the paint too much, so I did quite a bit of experimenting, and this is how I ended up doing it. So you can just experiment as well and find out, you know, the way that you like to put the paint on the paper. Okay, so again I'm keeping an eye on the edges, and I'm just going over that edge again with my brush. I don't want the feathering, so I'm not going to just walk away from this and let it dry. I'm going to keep an eye on it as it dries. And I'm using one of my previous paintings as a guide to what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to keep a nice mix between big shapes and small shapes. Okay, so at this point I decided to put a bit of the cerulean blue in the middle, and I'm actually using a separate brush for each colour, which is quite handy because I'm having to work quite quickly, and like I said, I'm keeping an eye on the shapes, so it means that I don't have to rinse off each brush each time. Okay, I'm just going to put the music up for a bit, and then I'll jump in again in a bit. Okay, so I did do a little bit of wet on dry there, but I mostly want to do wet on wet. So I'm going to re-wet my paper, and I'm doing this carefully with a wide brush, and I'm just going over it once because I don't want to disturb the paint underneath too much. Okay, so it's the same principle when I'm adding my second layer of colours. So I don't want to scrub at the paper too much because I don't want to disturb the paint underneath. So I'm just putting these colours on quite lightly, and I'm just not disturbing them or going over them too many times. Now I'm just trying to get a good balance between light and dark, so I am leaving some white areas there as well. Okay, so I'll just put the music up again for a bit. Okay, so I spent quite a bit of time softening the edges of this shape because I felt like they were too harsh, and in the end I used a brush to remove some of the paint. So I wanted this to be really dry, I didn't want the paint to move around anymore, and I was more or less finished. It's just these edges were kind of bothering me a bit. I tried to soften them with a dryish brush, but it wasn't working, so I'm going to put another shape over the top, and I'm using the same mix as the sort of reddish colour, but I'm adding quite a bit more burnt sienna. Now the paint, I'm quite happy with the painting, so I didn't want to ruin it. I just added this more square shape as a contrast to the more circular shapes. And actually when I used the edge of the brush to soften that line, a bit of the burnt sienna came out too thick. But that is one of those sort of accidents that happens in watercolour, and I ended up actually really liking this part. I just softened it a bit and blended it into the shape a little bit. So these kind of things do happen when you're using watercolour, and you have to kind of go with them. And sometimes they're the things that can really make the painting nice. Okay, so I feel like this painting is probably finished. I'm going to take off the masking tape to just be able to get a really good look at the composition. And I did try to take some of that paint off the edge with some water, but it wasn't really moving, so I just left it. But I'm happy with how this painting is looking, and I'm going to take it away and just cut those edges off. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to call this finished. I'm comparing it with the other painting, and I do like this darker area that I added after, but I do feel that there's enough contrast on my painting, so I'm going to leave it. Now, if you try something similar, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you've got any questions or other comments, then please do put them below. And if you like the video, then please hit like. And if you'd like to see similar videos in the future, then please subscribe to my channel. Okay, thank you. Bye.